The blood-red sun cast long shadows across the main street of Silver Creek as Cassidy Thornton stared at her mother's silhouette through the lace curtains of their modest home. Her heart hammered against her ribs, disbelief and anger warring within her as she yanked fruitlessly at the doorknob once more. The distinctive click of the key turning in the lock had sealed her fate, or so her mother thought. "You'll thank me one day, Cassidy," her mother's muffled voice came from inside. "That man is nothing but trouble, and I won't have you throwing away your future on some wandering cowboy with empty pockets and emptier promises." It was 1875, and at 20 years old, Cassidy had spent her entire life under her mother's watchful eye. Ever since her father had been killed in a mining accident 6 years ago, Eleanor Thornton had tightened her grip on her only daughter, determined that Cassidy would make a proper match, preferably with Bernard Whitfield, the banker's son, whose wealth would secure their position in Silver Creek society. "Mother, please," Cassidy pleaded, her voice breaking as she pressed her palms against the wooden door. "You can't keep me locked out of my own home." "I most certainly can," came the sharp reply. "Not until you come to your senses. You'll cool your heels on that porch until you agree to stop seeing that Ryder boy." Cassidy's auburn hair tumbled loose from its pins as she slumped against the porch railing. The evening air was cooling rapidly, and she had nothing but the thin cotton dress she wore. Her mother had caught her returning from a secret meeting with Adam Ryder, the cowboy who had ridden into town 3 months ago and turned her carefully planned life upside down. "Everything all right here, Miss Thornton?" The deep voice startled her, and she whirled to find Adam himself standing at the bottom of the porch steps, concern etched across his handsome features. At 25, he cut an impressive figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with sandy hair that curled slightly at the edges of his Stetson and eyes the color of the summer sky. "Adam," she whispered, glancing nervously at the door, "you shouldn't be here. My mother locked you out," he finished, his keen eyes taking in the situation. "I heard the commotion as I was passing by." Cassidy descended the steps slowly, conscious of the fact that any neighbor might see them together and report back to her mother. "She won't let me back in until I promise never to see you again." Adam's expression hardened briefly before softening as he looked down at her. "Then you'll have a key to mine," he said simply, reaching for her hand. Cassidy's breath caught in her throat. "What?" "I've got a small place at the edge of town. It's not much, but it's clean and warm. You can stay there tonight, and tomorrow we'll sort this out proper." His voice lowered. "I won't leave you out here in the cold, Cassidy." "Adam, I can't." Her protest died on her lips as she looked back at the darkened house. Her mother would not relent, not tonight, and the alternative was spending the night on the porch or seeking charity from neighbors who would surely report back to Eleanor. "Where is it?" "Just beyond Miller's Creek. Come on, I'll take you there." He hesitated. "Unless you'd rather I found you different accommodations, Mrs. Jenkins at the boarding house might take you in." Cassidy squared her shoulders, making her decision. "No, I'll go with you." They walked in silence through the deepening twilight, keeping to the shadows. Silver Creek was a small town of barely 2,000 souls, and gossip traveled faster than a prairie fire. Adam's hand occasionally brushed against hers, but he maintained a respectful distance. "I'm sorry about your mother," he said finally as they crossed the wooden bridge over Miller's Creek. Cassidy sighed. "She's been different since Pa died. Fearful. She thinks the only security is money, and the only way to money is marrying it." "And you don't agree?" "I want more than security, Adam. I want—" She trailed off, unsure how to express the longing that had grown inside her since meeting him, a desire for passion, for adventure, for a life that meant something beyond social standing. "Here we are," Adam said, stopping before a small but well-kept cabin set back from the road. A single lantern hung from the porch, casting a warm glow over the weathered wood. "Like I said, it's not much." "It's perfect," Cassidy whispered, taking in the neat garden and the smoke curling from the stone chimney. Adam had mentioned that he'd been fixing up a place, but she hadn't realized how homelike it would feel. He opened the door, revealing a simple but comfortable space, a main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and doors leading to what she presumed were a bedroom and storeroom. Everything was meticulously clean, with handmade furniture that spoke of skill and care. You can take the bed, Adam said, gesturing to one of the doors. I'll sleep out here by the fire. This is your home, Cassidy argued. I can't take your bed. You can and you will, he insisted gently. My mother would haunt me from the grave if I didn't show proper manners. Cassidy couldn't help but smile. In the 3 months she'd known Adam, she'd learned that beneath his rugged exterior beat a heart guided by a strong moral compass. It was one of the many things that had drawn her to him, despite her mother's disapproval. Your mother must have been quite a woman, she said, settling into a chair by the fire. Adam's expression softened as he stoked the flames. She was. Taught me everything worth knowing. He paused. She'd have liked you, I think. Said a man should find himself a woman with spirit. And is that what you found? Cassidy asked boldly, surprised by her own daring. Adam looked at her steadily. I believe I have. Question is, what does that woman want? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Cassidy knew that her answer would change everything, her relationship with her mother, her standing in town, her future. But looking into Adam's earnest blue eyes, she found her truth. Freedom, she said softly. To choose my own path, to love whom I wish. And who might that be? Adam asked, his voice rough with emotion. I think you know, Cassidy whispered. The night passed with quiet conversation by the fire, Adam respecting his promise to keep his distance while they spoke of their lives, their dreams, and the obstacles they faced. Cassidy learned that Adam had come west after the war, working as a ranch hand before saving enough to buy this small plot of land. He had plans to expand, to build a proper ranch of his own one day. I've got 60 acres out past Cottonwood Ridge, he told her. Good grazing land. Started with 20 head of cattle, but the herd's growing. His eyes lit up as he spoke of his dreams. It's not a fortune, but it's a future. A man could raise a family on such a place, given time. Morning came too soon, the first golden rays filtering through the cabin windows. Cassidy had slept fitfully in Adam's comfortable bed, the scent of him leather, pine, and something uniquely his own surrounding her. When she emerged, she found him already up, cooking breakfast over the fire. Thought you might be hungry, he said, offering her a plate of eggs and bacon. We need to figure out what happens next. Cassidy accepted the food gratefully. I need to speak with my mother. Make her understand that I'm not a child anymore. Adam nodded slowly. I could come with you. No, she said firmly. This is between me and her. Besides, your presence would only inflame the situation. At least let me walk you to town. After breakfast, they made their way back toward Silver Creek. The morning was bright and clear, the town already bustling with activity as they approached. Adam stopped at the edge of town. I won't make things worse for you, he said. But Cassidy, whatever happens with your mother, my offer stands. You'll always have a key to my home. She squeezed his hand. Thank you. For everything. The walk to her mother's house seemed both too long and too short. Cassidy rehearsed what she would say, how she would make Eleanor understand that her heart was set on Adam. But as she rounded the corner onto their street, the sight that greeted her froze the blood in her veins. A crowd had gathered outside the Thornton home, and at the center stood Sheriff Miller and Dr. Peterson. Cassidy broke into a run, pushing through the onlookers. What's happened? She demanded, her voice high with panic. Where's my mother? Sheriff Miller's weathered face was grave as he turned to her. Miss Thornton, we've been looking for you. My mother. She's inside with the doctor, he said gently. Had some kind of spell in the night. Mrs. K. Henderson from next door heard her calling out and found her collapsed in the parlor. Cassidy didn't wait to hear more, rushing past him into the house. She found her mother in bed, pale and drawn, with Dr. Peterson checking her pulse. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open at Cassidy's entrance. Cassidy, she whispered, her voice weak, you came back. Of course I came back, Cassidy said, kneeling beside the bed and taking her mother's frail hand. What happened? Dr. Peterson cleared his throat. Your mother appears to have suffered a heart episode, Miss Thornton, not uncommon for someone with her condition. Condition? Cassidy looked between them, confused. What condition? Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. I didn't want to worry you. She's been my patient for over a year, the doctor explained. Heart troubles. I've advised her to avoid excitement and strain. Guilt washed over Cassidy in a cold wave. Had their argument caused this? Had she nearly killed her mother with her defiance? She looked down at Eleanor's pale face, noting for the first time the fine lines of pain etched around her mouth, the thinness of her once plump cheeks. "I'll leave you two to talk," Dr. Peterson said, packing his bag. "Mrs. Thornton needs rest, but she'll recover with proper care." He gave Cassidy a meaningful look. "No upsets. Understood?" After he left, a heavy silence fell between mother and daughter. Finally, Eleanor spoke. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "When you didn't come back, I thought I'd lost you too." "I was safe," Cassidy assured her. "I stayed with a friend." Eleanor's eyes, so like her own, searched her face. "That Ryder man?" Cassidy hesitated, then nodded. "Nothing improper happened, Mother. He gave me his bed and slept by the fire." To her surprise, Eleanor didn't rage or scold. Instead, tears filled her eyes. "You love him, don't you?" "I do," Cassidy admitted, the truth of it settling in her chest like a warm stone. "He's a good man, Mother. Hard-working, honest. He has land and cattle." "But not wealth," Eleanor interrupted. "Not security." "No," Cassidy acknowledged. "Not yet. But he has plans, dreams, and I want to be part of them." Eleanor turned her face away. "I only wanted to protect you from what I endured, the uncertainty, the fear. Your father was a good man too, but good men die, Cassidy, and leave their women with nothing but memories and mounting debts." Understanding bloomed in Cassidy's heart. Her mother's controlling nature, her obsession with security, it wasn't just about social standing, it was about fear. "I know you're scared for me," she said gently, "but locking me away from life isn't protection, it's imprisonment, and I can't live that way." Eleanor was silent for a long moment. "Bring him to dinner," she said finally. "Let me meet this man properly before I judge him further." Relief and joy surged through Cassidy. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a beginning. The dinner took place 3 days later, once Eleanor had regained enough strength to sit at the dining table. Adam arrived precisely on time, wearing his best shirt and carrying a bouquet of wildflowers for Eleanor and a small wooden box for Cassidy. "For you," he said softly, handing her the box as they stood in the entry hall. "Open it later." Dinner was a tense affair at first, with Eleanor asking pointed questions about Adam's background, his prospects, his intentions. To his credit, Adam answered honestly, neither exaggerating his circumstances nor apologizing for them. "I don't have a fortune, Mrs. Thornton," he acknowledged, "but I've never been afraid of hard work, and I've got good land that will provide for a family." "And what of my daughter's comfort?" Eleanor pressed. "Cassidy was raised in town with certain amenities." Adam glanced at Cassidy, his eyes warm. "I won't pretend ranch life is easy, madam. It's hard work from sunup to sundown. But I promise you this, your daughter will never want for anything essential. She'll have a solid roof over her head, food on her table, and a husband who cherishes her every day of her life." Eleanor studied him for a long moment. Bold promises from a young man. "Not promises, madam. Intentions. A promise is just words until it's backed by action." Something in Eleanor's expression shifted. "You remind me of my late husband." He spoke plainly, too. The evening ended with a tentative peace established. As Adam prepared to leave, Eleanor surprised them both by extending her hand to him. "You may call again, Mr. Ryder," she said formally. "Perhaps Sunday after church." After he departed, Cassidy opened the wooden box he had given her. Inside, nestled on a small cushion of velvet, lay a key simple but beautifully crafted, with a small heart engraved on its head. "What is that?" Eleanor asked, peering over her shoulder. Cassidy's fingers closed around the key, its metal warm against her palm. "A promise," she whispered. Over the following weeks, Adam became a regular visitor at the Thornton home. Eleanor's resistance gradually melted as she observed the way he treated her daughter with respect, tenderness, and a devotion that couldn't be feigned. He brought books that he thought Cassidy might enjoy, listened attentively when she played the piano, and spoke honestly of his plans for the future. Spring turned to summer, and with it came change to Silver Creek. The railroad was expanding westward, bringing new opportunities and faces to town. Among them was Charles Blackwell, a railroad investor who took an immediate interest in the eligible young women of Silver Creek, particularly Cassidy. "He's asked about you," Eleanor mentioned one evening as they prepared dinner. Mr. Blackwell. He'll be at the Founders' Day celebration tomorrow. Cassidy continued chopping vegetables, her movements precise. I'm sure he'll find plenty of willing company. He's quite wealthy, Eleanor persisted, and not unattractive for a man of 40. Mother, Cassidy set down her knife, fixing Eleanor with a steady gaze. I thought we were past this. Eleanor sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. I only mention it because options are important, Cassidy. Your Adam is a fine young man, but nothing, Cassidy interrupted firmly. I love him, and he loves me. That's all that matters. The Founders' Day celebration was the social event of the season in Silver Creek, with the entire town gathering in the square for music, dancing, and a potluck feast that showcased the best cooking of every household. Cassidy wore her best dress, a cornflower blue that matched her eyes, and let her mother arrange her hair in an elaborate style adorned with small white flowers. Adam met them at the edge of the square, his admiring gaze making Cassidy's cheeks flush with pleasure. You look beautiful, he said simply, offering his arm. The celebration was in full swing, with fiddle music filling the air and children darting between groups of adults who stood chatting in the warm evening. Cassidy noticed Charles Blackwell watching her from across the square, his keen eyes following her movements as she and Adam joined the dancing. You've caught the attention of the railroad man, Adam observed, his hand warm at her waist as they moved through the steps of a country dance. Cassidy glanced up at him, surprised by the hint of tension in his voice. Have I? Can't blame him for having good taste, Adam said lightly, though something in his eyes remained guarded. Just making sure you know you have choices. She stopped mid-step, forcing him to halt as well. Adam Ryder, are you jealous? Not jealous, he corrected, guiding her back into the dance. Just aware that a man like that could offer you things I can't. Such as fine dresses, trips to San Francisco, or even back east. A life of ease. Cassidy shook her head, moving closer to him than the dance strictly required. I don't want a life of ease. I want a life of purpose, with someone who sees me really sees me. Her voice lowered. That's you, Adam. It's always been you. The music ended, and they found themselves at the edge of the dancing area, partially concealed by a large oak tree. Adam took her hands in his expression suddenly serious. I was going to wait, to do this proper with a ring, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But I need to know, Cassidy Thornton. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Joy bubbled up within her like a spring. Yes, she whispered, not caring who might see as she reached up to touch his face. Yes, Adam. Their moment was interrupted by a commotion from the center of the square. Shouts rang out, followed by the distinctive crack of a gunshot. Adam instinctively pulled Cassidy behind him as they turned to see what was happening. A group of men on horseback had ridden into the celebration, their faces obscured by bandanas. The leader fired another shot into the air. Nobody move, he shouted. This is a robbery. Empty your pockets and purses, nice and easy. Panic rippled through the crowd. Children cried, women screamed, men looked around desperately for ways to protect their families. Sheriff Miller was nowhere to be seen. Later they would learn he'd been called away to deal with a disturbance at the saloon, likely a diversion planned by the bandits. Stay here, Adam whispered urgently to Cassidy, pressing her back against the tree trunk. Don't move until I come for you. Adam, no, she began, but he was already moving, slipping away through the shadows toward the edge of the square. The bandits dismounted, moving through the crowd and collecting valuables in sacks. One approached Eleanor, who stood frozen near the buffet tables. Hand over them pretty earrings, lady, he demanded, reaching for her. Leave her alone, Cassidy called out before she could stop herself, abandoning her hiding place and rushing toward her mother. The bandit turned, his eyes narrowing behind his mask. Well now, what have we here? His gaze raked over Cassidy in a way that made her skin crawl. Maybe I'll take more than just jewelry. Eleanor stepped between them, her slight frame somehow imposing. You'll not touch my daughter. The man laughed a harsh sound, brave words from a woman with no gun. He reached for Cassidy, grabbing her arm. Let her go. The voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable threat. Adam stood a few yards away, a rifle leveled at the bandit's chest. Now. Time seemed to slow. The bandit's grip on Cassidy's arm tightened, then released as he weighed his options. His hand moved toward the gun at his hip. "I wouldn't," Adam warned, his aim steady. For a moment, Cassidy thought the bandit would surrender. Then everything happened at once. The man drew his pistol, Adam fired, and Cassidy was thrown to the ground as Eleanor pushed her away from the danger. The bandit crumpled, clutching his shoulder where Adam's bullet had struck. More shots rang out as the other townsmen, emboldened by Adam's action, fought back against the remaining bandits. In the confusion, Cassidy lost sight of Adam, crawling to where her mother lay unnaturally still on the ground. "Mother?" she called, turning Eleanor over gently. "Mother, are you hurt?" Eleanor's eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding them for a moment before recognition dawned. "Cassidy, are you all right?" Relief flooded through her. "I'm fine, you pushed me down." "Of course I did," Eleanor said, allowing Cassidy to help her sit up. "I'm your mother." The bandits were retreating now, abandoning their wounded companion as they mounted their horses and fled. In the aftermath, the townspeople gathered their scattered belongings and tended to the few who had been injured in the chaos. Cassidy searched frantically for Adam, finding him at last, helping Dr. Peterson with a man who had been struck by a stray bullet. He looked up as she approached, his face lighting with relief. "You're all right," he said, crossing to her in 3 quick strides and pulling her into his arms. "I was so worried." "We're both fine," she assured him, clinging to his solid warmth. "Thanks to you." Adam shook his head. "Not me. Your mother. I saw her push you out of the way." He looked over at Eleanor, who was being helped to her feet by Mayor Simmons. "She's braver than I gave her credit for." The celebration was over, the festive mood shattered by violence. As they walked home, Eleanor leaned heavily on Cassidy's arm, uncharacteristically quiet. When they reached their house, Adam helped Eleanor to her chair by the fire before respectfully taking his leave. "I'll check on you tomorrow," he promised, his eyes lingering on Cassidy. After he left, Eleanor sat staring into the flames for a long time. "He defended you," she said finally, without hesitation. Cassidy knelt beside her chair. "Yes, that's who he is, Mother." Eleanor's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "I was wrong about him." She looked down at Cassidy, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And I was wrong to try to control your heart." "Mother." "No, let me finish." Eleanor straightened in her chair. "I've been so afraid of losing you that I nearly drove you away. Your father would be ashamed of me." "Never," Cassidy protested. "You were trying to protect me." "There's protection, and then there's smothering." Eleanor sighed. "When that man grabbed you tonight, I saw with perfect clarity what matters. Not wealth, not social standing. Just your safety and happiness." She paused. "Adam makes you happy, doesn't he?" "More than I can say," Cassidy admitted. "Then he has my blessing should he ask for it." Cassidy's heart soared. "He already asked me to marry him, Mother. Tonight, before the bandits came." Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "And your answer?" "I said yes." To Cassidy's surprise, Eleanor smiled. "Then I suppose we have a wedding to plan." The engagement was announced formally the following Sunday after church, to much speculation and a few raised eyebrows among Silver Creek's social set. Cassidy found she didn't care what anyone thought, not when Adam looked at her with such pride and love as the Reverend offered a special blessing for their future. Charles Blackwell approached them afterward, extending his congratulations with perfect politeness, though his eyes betrayed his disappointment. "You're a fortunate man, Ryder," he said, shaking Adam's hand. "Miss Thornton is a remarkable young woman." "No one knows that better than I do, sir," Adam replied, his arm secure around Cassidy's waist. The wedding was set for October, when the ranch work would slow with the coming of fall. In the meantime, Adam threw himself into preparing his cabin for his bride, adding a proper kitchen and expanding the bedroom. Cassidy divided her time between helping her mother and learning all she could about ranch management from Mrs. Peterson, whose family ran one of the largest cattle operations in the territory. "It's not an easy life," the older woman cautioned her, "especially for a town girl." "I'm stronger than I look," Cassidy replied, rolling up her sleeves as she helped the rancher's wife preserve vegetables for the winter. Summer faded into early fall, bringing with it an unexpected letter from Cassidy's aunt in St. Louis. Eleanor's sister had learned of the engagement and enclosed a generous wedding gift, enough money to add significant improvements to Adam's ranch. "We can't accept this," Adam protested when Eleanor showed him the bank draft. "It's not for you," Eleanor pointed out. "It's for Cassidy to secure her future. And before you argue further, consider that pride makes a cold bedfellow in winter." Adam looked to Cassidy, who stood watching the exchange with a mixture of amusement and anxiety. "It's your decision," he said finally. "Your family, your gift." Cassidy considered carefully. "Let's use it to build our home together," she suggested. "Not the cabin, though I love it dearly, but a proper house where we can raise a family." Adam's eyes softened. "If that's what you want." "It is. A home of our own making, not built on pride or fear, but on love and partnership." With the additional funds, their plans expanded. Adam hired workers from town to help build a substantial ranch house on his property, incorporating ideas from both of them. Cassidy wanted large windows to let in the light and a spacious kitchen where she could cook for their future family. Adam insisted on a wide porch where they could watch the sunset over their land. As the wedding day approached, an unexpected visitor arrived in Silver Creek. Thomas Ryder, Adam's older brother, rode into town one crisp September morning, bringing with him news from their family's home in Missouri. "Mother's ring," Thomas explained, pressing a small velvet pouch into Adam's hand. "She always said it should go to the first of her sons to find a worthy bride." The ring was a simple gold band, set with a single pearl, not ostentatious but elegant in its simplicity. Adam presented it to Cassidy that evening as they walked by Miller's Creek, the setting sun gilding the water. "It's beautiful," she whispered, slipping it onto her finger where it fit perfectly, "like it was made for me." "Maybe it was," Adam said, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache with happiness. 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. A fire broke out at the livery stable in the middle of the night, spreading quickly to the adjacent buildings. The entire town turned out to fight the blaze, forming bucket brigades from the creek to the burning structures. Cassidy worked alongside her mother, passing buckets down the line, her arms aching and her face blackened with soot. Adam was at the front of the effort, directing men as they battled to keep the fire from reaching the rest of the town. By dawn, the fire was contained, but the livery stable, the feed store, and sadly, Adam's nearly completed ranch house had been destroyed. The sparks had carried on the wind, setting the new timbers ablaze before anyone could reach it. Standing amid the charred ruins of what would have been their home, Cassidy felt Adam's arm around her shoulders. "We'll rebuild," he said firmly, though she could hear the disappointment in his voice. "Start again." Eleanor, who had come with them to survey the damage, stepped forward. "You'll stay with us," she announced. "Both of you after the wedding." Adam looked at her in surprise. "Mrs. Thornton—" "Don't argue with me, young man. My house is large enough for the three of us until you can rebuild," she sniffed. "Besides, the winter's coming, and I won't have my daughter living in that tiny cabin when the snow flies." Cassidy caught Adam's eye, seeing the mixture of pride and practicality warring within him. "Please," she murmured, "just until spring." He relented with a sigh. "Just until spring," he agreed, "and we'll contribute to the household expenses." Eleanor's mouth quirked in a small smile. "I would expect nothing less." The wedding took place as planned in the small church on the hill overlooking Silver Creek. Cassidy wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit her taller frame. Adam waited at the altar, his brother standing beside him as best man, his face alight with love, as Cassidy walked down the aisle on Mayor Simmons's arm. "Who gives this woman?" Reverend Clark asked. "I do," came a clear voice, and everyone turned to see Eleanor rising from her seat in the front pew. She stepped forward, taking Cassidy's hand from the mayor and placing it in Adam's. "Her mother gives her freely, with love and blessing." There wasn't a dry eye in the church as the ceremony continued, Cassidy and Adam exchanging vows they had written themselves. When Adam slipped the pearl ring onto her finger beside the simple gold band he'd given her, he whispered words meant only for her. "You've had the key to my heart since the moment I saw you." The reception was held in the town square, the same place where months earlier they had faced danger together. Now it was transformed with lanterns and flowers, tables laden with food contributed by every household in Silver Creek. Even Charles Blackwell attended, presenting the couple with a handsome clock for their future home. As night fell, Adam led Cassidy in their first dance as husband and wife, holding her close as the fiddles played a sweet, yearning melody. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. "Completely," she answered, lifting her face for his kiss. They retired to Adam's cabin that night, where he carried her across the threshold despite her laughing protests. Inside, she discovered he had transformed the simple space, filling it with wildflowers and candles, making a bower of the small bedroom where their new life together would begin. Winter settled over Silver Creek, bringing snow and cold winds that howled around the eaves of the Thornton house. Despite Eleanor's initial concerns about maintaining proper boundaries with the newlyweds, they fell into a comfortable routine. Adam rode out each day to tend his cattle, returning in the evenings to help with household chores. Cassidy divided her time between assisting her mother and learning to be a rancher's wife, mastering new skills and planning for their future home. "You're different," Eleanor observed one evening as they sat by the fire, Cassidy mending one of Adam's shirts while her mother knitted. "Stronger." Cassidy looked up, needle paused mid-stitch. "Am I?" "You always had spine, girl, but now you've found your purpose." Eleanor's needles clicked rhythmically. "It suits you." Spring arrived with a burst of green across the prairie, bringing with it renewal and hope. Construction began again on Adam and Cassidy's ranch house, this time with improvements to the original design based on lessons learned over the winter. "We'll have it ready before summer's end," Adam promised as they walked the perimeter of the foundation one warm April morning. "Just in time." Cassidy looked at him quizzically. "In time for what?" Adam's smile was tender as he placed a hand on her stomach where the first tiny swell was just becoming noticeable beneath her dress. "For our child to be born in the home we built together." The news of Cassidy's pregnancy had been met with joy by Eleanor, who immediately began knitting tiny garments and planning for her grandchild's arrival. She had changed, too, over the months, softening as she watched her daughter blossom in the love she had once feared. "Will you come with us?" Cassidy asked her mother as they sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. "When the house is finished, there's plenty of room." Eleanor considered the question, her fingers working steadily on a small blanket. "No," she said finally. "This is my home, and that will be yours and Adam's and the baby's." She looked up with a smile. "But I'll visit often, if I'm welcome." "Always," Cassidy assured her, covering her mother's hand with her own. The ranch house was completed in August, a comfortable two-story structure built of local stone and timber. It stood on a gentle rise overlooking the valley where Adam's cattle grazed, with wide windows and the porch he had insisted upon wrapping around 3 sides. On the day they moved in, Adam presented Cassidy with a small wooden box, similar to the one he had given her that night after dinner at her mother's house. "Another key?" she asked, opening it to find not 1 but 2 gleaming keys nestled on velvet. "One for the front door," Adam explained, "and one for the back, so you'll always have a way home, no matter which direction life takes you." Cassidy's eyes filled with tears as she reached up to kiss him. "I already have everything I need right here." Their daughter was born on a crisp October day, exactly 1 year after their wedding. They named her Alice Eleanor Ryder, for both their mothers. As Cassidy held her newborn daughter before the fireplace in their home, with Adam beside her and Eleanor fussing over the baby's blankets, she thought back to that night when her mother had locked the door, thinking to keep her from the man she loved. "What are you smiling about?" Adam asked, his finger caught in the tiny grip of his daughter's hand. "I was just thinking about keys," Cassidy replied, leaning against his shoulder, "and doors, and how sometimes being locked out can lead you exactly where you're meant to be." Over the years, the Ryder Ranch prospered. Adam's careful management and Cassidy's shrewd business sense saw their cattle operation grow into one of the most successful in the territory. They added to their family 2 sons, and another daughter joined Alice, filling the house with laughter and activity. Eleanor remained in her home in town but spent long stretches at the ranch, especially after each new grandchild arrived. The bitterness and fear that had once driven her faded, replaced by a contentment she had not known since before her husband's death. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam surprised Cassidy with a journey to San Francisco, leaving the children in Eleanor's capable care. They stayed in a grand hotel and attended the theater, enjoying the novelties of city life before returning eagerly to their beloved ranch. "Do you ever regret it?" Adam asked as they rode the last miles home, the familiar silhouette of their house appearing on the horizon. "Choosing this life over what your mother wanted for you?" Cassidy considered the question, taking in the sweeping vistas of their land, thinking of the home and family waiting for them. "Not for a single moment," she answered truthfully. "Every door that closed led me to the one that mattered most." As they approached the house, they could see their children on the porch, waving excitedly. Eleanor stood behind them, one hand shading her eyes as she watched for their return. Adam reached across to take Cassidy's hand, his touch as warm and sure as it had been that night 20 years ago when he'd offered her sanctuary, and though neither of them had fully realized it then, his heart. "Welcome home, Mrs. Ryder," he said softly. Cassidy squeezed his hand, her heart full to bursting with the love and life they had built together. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." They rode the rest of the way home together, side by side, just as they had traveled through life partners in every sense of the word, their love, the key that had unlocked a future brighter than either had dared to dream.